I have a horror story from Snapchat that happened just last year. I use Snapchat quite a bit and communicate with friends on there a lot. I post stories pretty frequently as well. I've had Snapchat for almost 10 years and over time have accumulated lots of friends on the app. When I post a story, sometimes friends will reply to them and say whatever. Now, starting last year, every time I posted a story, this one guy would seem to reply to it. I didn't really know who he was, but his name on Snapchat was Dave. I don't have any idea when exactly he added me or anything, but he would say things that were sort of creepy. Like one, for example, that stood out was when I posted a picture of my new apartment. The picture was just of like the living room and kitchen. He responded saying, "I wish I knew where you lived." It was almost like he was trying to be weird. I never bothered to delete him or anything because I didn't think it was too much of a problem. He never snapped me outside of responding to my stories, but eventually I got tired of it and deleted him. I didn't really think anything of it after doing so, but the next day, a new account added me on Snapchat. I didn't know that it was him making another account. I added him back out of curiosity because I had no idea who it was. Then, he sent me a snap asking why I deleted him. I then realized who it was and then deleted that account. Not too long after that, he tried to add me again with another one, but I did not add him back. He was using different usernames, but I knew that it was still him. The very next day, I got a text on my phone from a number that I did not recognize. It just said, "Hi," and I asked who it was. It took until like the third text for me to realize that it was the same guy. He started cursing me out, calling me terrible things, and was clearly very angry how I kept ignoring him. I blocked the number after he sent me about 20 texts in the span of 2 minutes. However, this couldn't stop him either. As most of you know, there are apps and websites where you can get new phone numbers for free. I've really never used one, but I know that they exist. I'm guessing that's what this guy was doing, because I got another text a while later. It was very clearly still him. I blocked this number too. Then, a while later, there was another new number. This time, though, he left a voicemail. I listened to it, and the man sounded much older than me. He basically called me every name in the book and then threatened me. I blocked his number. This continued for several days. I tried to ignore it as best as I could and just kept blocking his numbers. Soon, though, I decided to get a new phone. I sort of needed one anyways, and decided to get a new number as well. I also changed my Snapchat username. After that, I never heard from the guy again. Hopefully it stays that way. I just finished my freshman year of college. I'm a female, and Snapchat is my main way of communicating with my friends. One day, I got a Snapchat notification that a boy named Ryan had added me. I opened Snapchat and added him back. I checked his Snap score and saw that it was 52,000, so he seemed to be a real guy. His username was Ryan and then a bunch of numbers that I can't remember. I sent him a snap of the top of my head and asked, "Who is this?" About a minute later, he responded. I opened his snap, which was all black, and said, "I saw you on Quick Add and thought I should add you." I left him on red after that, but I didn't delete him. Within a couple hours, I had forgotten all about him. That night, I was laying in bed and watching some TV before I went to sleep. I started to hear a light tapping on my window. I shut off the TV so that I could hear it better. After a couple seconds, I heard it again. There was 2 large bushes in front of my window, and when I looked out, all I could see was leaves and darkness. Then, I saw it. A hand came up from below the window and tapped a few times. I ran out of my room and got my dad, who was in the living room watching TV. He went outside and returned several minutes later, saying he didn't see anyone. I went back into my bedroom and tried to sleep. It took me a long time, but there was no more tapping on my window, and eventually I got some sleep. The next morning, I woke up and checked my phone. There was a snap from Ryan. It was a picture of my house that said, "Why didn't you open your window for me last night?" I went to respond, but he had deleted me. I thought about going to the police, but all I had was his username, and I figured there was nothing that could be done. That night, I was once again laying in bed and relaxing before I got tired enough to sleep. Once again, I heard tapping. This time, instead of running to find my dad, I texted him on my phone and said that the tapping was going on again. It continued for about another minute before I heard commotion outside my window and the sound of my dad yelling. I then called the police, and within 5 minutes they arrived. My dad was holding down the man, who turned out to be in his 30s, and the man was arrested. Since this happened, I turned off my Snap Maps, and I don't add people back unless I know them. I'm a senior in college at the moment. This happened during last semester in the fall. Like most college kids, I use Snapchat to communicate with the majority of my friends, and I've used it for many years. I don't really get added by people that much unless I know them in person, so around the beginning of last semester when I started getting added by people a lot, I thought it was strange. It didn't take me long at all to figure out that the people adding me were bots. I would get added by a bot roughly once a week, sometimes multiple times in a week. They would always be a female, and oftentimes would send me some sort of spam chat message or something like that. When this happened, I would always just ignore it and would never add them back or anything like that. One day, I got added by another account with a female name. I looked at the account to see that it was more than likely another spam account. I didn't recognize the name, and the user didn't have a snap score when I looked. After that, I deleted them and moved on. But a short time later, I received a Snapchat from them. It was a text message, and I expected it to be another spam message, but when I clicked on the chat, it was pretty threatening. They said something like I better watch my back, and I was in trouble. They also said they were going to get me. This actually got me to respond. I asked who this was and why they said that. They only responded to say basically the same thing, but in all caps. I was kind of creeped out by this. I was a pretty quiet guy, and didn't really have that many friends at college, but the friends that I did have were very close, and I knew they wouldn't do something like that to me. But still, I decided to ask any of them if they knew anything about it. They all told me no, and didn't seem to know why I was getting these messages. The next day, I got another threatening and cryptic message. It was just saying basically that I was a bad person and that I was in trouble. I asked who the person was who was sending me this. They didn't respond to me at all, and at that point, I decided to block them. That way, they wouldn't be able to contact me anymore. But later in that day, I saw I was added by another account. This account was another female name. I decided to look up the name, but it came back with no results on all social media sites that I looked it up on. They sent me the same message again, and I immediately blocked the account this time also. After that, I started getting paranoid. Everywhere that I went around campus, I would wonder if I was being watched, or who wanted to get me. When I was in classes, I would wonder if it was another student, or when I was in the cafeteria, I would look around to see if anyone was watching me. I never seemed to get any clues as to why someone was threatening me like this. I didn't get added again for 2 days, but then I was added by another person. This person's name I also didn't recognize, and I got another message from them. At this point, I looked in my settings and was able to change them so that nobody could send me snaps unless I had added them back. This made me feel a little bit better. I did get added by another person the next day, but I never bothered to look after I didn't recognize their name. After this, I figured whoever it was would give up. I didn't get added by anyone else for a while. I was starting to feel better about things, until one day I was added by another user again. When I looked, it was actually a girl who I had in a class with me, and she occasionally talked to me. I added her back, but a short time later, I saw that she had snapped me. When I opened up the message, I could clearly see that it was someone else pretending to be her. Her snap score was very low, and I got another threatening message. I immediately blocked the account. This really creeped me out to know that whoever was threatening me even knew the name of the classmates who I talked to. For the rest of the semester, I was on edge, but I didn't get added by any more people. This semester has gone by fine, and nothing has happened since. I just still wonder who it was, though, and why they were doing it. This story happened to me last summer. I'm a 20-year-old guy, and in my junior year of college. I was just relaxing on my phone in bed one night, a little bit past 1 a.m. I was right about to go to sleep when I saw the Snapchat notification on the top of my screen that a girl named Caitlin Smith had added me. Her name sounded sort of familiar to me, but I couldn't say that I knew who she was, so I went to the app and added her back. Then I went to Instagram and looked up her name to see if I recognized her. Unfortunately, there was very many girls by the name of Caitlin Smith to come up, so I had no idea which one was her, if any. I went on Snapchat again and looked at her snap score. When I saw that it was only 5, I immediately realized that this was probably a fake account, and then I deleted her on Snapchat. After that, I went to bed. The next morning when I woke up, my phone had several Snapchats on it from Caitlin Smith. At that point, I realized that I had my Snapchat settings so that even people that weren't my friends could still send me snaps. The first 2 were text chats. The first one read, "You deleted me," and the second one said, "Ha ha 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 ha." The next 2 snaps were both pictures, and they were all black with text of her cursing at me in various ways. I was pretty alarmed to see this, and when I clicked on her account once again, I saw that I had been blocked by her. I really didn't know who this was or why they were messing with me. Then came the scariest part. When I opened up my blinds in my bedroom window that morning, it revealed a sticky note that was stuck to it from the outside. I had to go outside to retrieve it to see what was written on it, and when I read it, it said, "Watch yourself." I remembered after that my Snapchat location was always on, and even though I had deleted the Caitlin user, we had still been friends for a good 10 minutes, which was more than enough time for her to screenshot my place on the map. I ended up texting all of my friends asking them if this was a joke, but to this day they all seriously deny it, and I really don't think it was any of them. Nothing happened again, but I have since made sure that my location is always off. For some background to the story, I'm a female and was 17 at the time. I was a senior in high school and lived with my parents. I have Snapchat and have had it since middle school actually. It was a very common way for me to talk to friends in high school. Occasionally, I would get added by random people who I didn't know. I would say it happened about every week or two. However, I never added anybody back unless I knew exactly who they were. I added some random people back when I was much younger, and some of them were kind of weird, so I stopped doing that. Well, I remember one day, I got added by some random guy on Snapchat. I did not add him back and deleted it. So I think it was the next day or else a couple days later, I got added by one of my friends from school. It was not one of my best friends, but somebody who I knew decently. I already was friends with her on Snapchat, so when I saw it, I figured that she made a new account. In high school, it was not that uncommon for people to make new accounts for various reasons. I didn't think too much of it, and I added her back. That afternoon, after I arrived home from school, I was just in my bedroom at my desk, and that same friend messaged me on Snapchat. She asked me what I was doing, and I said that I was just at home doing homework. She then told me that she was going to come over. I said okay, but it seemed a little bit odd. She had maybe come over like once or twice, but it had been a really long time. I also hadn't really hung out with her in a while. During this time, my parents were still gone at work, and I was at home by myself. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I assumed it to be my friend, and I was still a little bit confused that she was coming over at all. But she also did not text me on Snapchat to say that she was there or anything. So I left my bedroom, and I walked out into the living room. I soon saw that there was a random man standing on the front step. I had no idea who he was or what he was doing at my house. I decided not to answer the door. Luckily, he did not see me when I looked out of the window. I then went back to my bedroom. When I did, I saw that my friend had now messaged me on Snapchat. She told me that she was outside and asked to be let in. Now I knew what was going on. This was not my friend at all, but this man must have been pretending to be her. I instantly blocked the account. I then went back out into the living room and saw that the man was still standing there. I wasn't sure what I was going to do about it, but that's when I noticed my dad's car going down the street. He was coming back home from work. As soon as he started to pull into the driveway, the man at the front step just took off running. He left the front yard, going back out into the street. My dad came inside and mentioned how he saw a guy running from our yard. I told him what happened, and he called the cops. We talked to them when they came out, and they said that they would look into it. That man must have known my friend's name if he pretended to be her. How he even knew who I was, I do not know. My best guess is that he saw me on Facebook or Instagram or something, or maybe even in person. He must have looked at my friends list on probably Facebook to get her name and then impersonate her on Snapchat. It was crazy, but luckily I never heard from him or saw him again. Lately on Snapchat, there seems to be a lot of bots. I used to be added by spam accounts every once in a while, but not very often. Within the last few months though, it seems to be happening much more than before. I'm not sure if that's how it's been for everyone else or just me. But anyways, a couple of weeks ago, I was on my phone and on Instagram while bored in between classes. I'm in college and have a gap in between classes during Mondays and Wednesdays. As I was on Instagram, I saw a notification come on the top of my screen that somebody had added me on Snapchat. I didn't recognize the name, and it sounded fake to me, so I figured it was definitely a bot. I was so sure of this that I didn't even bother to go to Snapchat. I just stayed on Instagram. After my class was over, I then went home. I live off of campus in a sort of older college house with 2 other guys as my roommates. When I got back home, I was the only one there and went up to my room. I noticed that the bot account that had added me on Snapchat had sent me a snap. I then went on Snapchat to block and delete the account and was expecting to see the normal spam chat that the bots would send me. But when I got to Instagram, I saw that I hadn't been sent a chat, but instead a purple square as though it was a video. I debated even opening it, but out of curiosity, I decided to. After I clicked on it, I was surprised by what I saw. It was a video of a dark room being lit up only by the light of a camera, as if the person's phone had the flash on. They were walking around a dark room, and I occasionally saw their feet and part of their legs as they were walking. It appeared to be an unfinished basement that they were in. I then started to hear a creepy laughing noise. As the videos went on, the camera began to show more around the basement, and I realized that it looked an awful lot like our basement. I then noticed the TV box that we had down there, and that's when I knew for sure. The video then seemed 100 times more creepy to me than it already was, and my heart started pounding. The person in the video kept walking around and laughing, and then the camera turned to face the person. It was a man smiling with really long and messy hair. I had no idea who he was. The video then abruptly ended when it seemed like he was about to say something. I immediately left my bedroom and walked down the stairs to the basement door. I put my ear up to it and listened closely. I didn't hear anything at first, and I even thought about going down there, but then thought I heard a noise. I then didn't waste any time and left our house and got into my car. I decided to drive away because I didn't feel safe there anymore and went back to campus. I then told all my roommates about what had happened. Later that day, when we were all together, we felt much more brave and returned. We decided to all go down to the basement, but when we did, we found that it was empty and nobody was inside of it. We went around the house outside and saw that one of the windows leading down to the basement was broken and appeared to be open. We ended up fixing that up, and since then, the person has deleted me on Snapchat, and I have no idea who they are. I went to a pretty big college. There was a ton of students that went there, and I enjoyed the experience. This was a few years ago now, but one day, after one of my classes, I happened to meet a girl. At the time, I was a freshman, and this was like sort of early on in my first semester. I had only made a few new friends that were in some of my classes. When I was leaving one of my pretty large classes, a girl was walking next to me, who I assumed was in my class, and she complimented me on my shoes. It took me by surprise, and when I saw her, I thought she was good looking, and I complimented her back. This led to me introducing myself to her, and after briefly talking, she asked me for my snap. I was excited by this, and we snapped for the next few days quite a bit. Her name was Jenna, and after getting to know each other over Snapchat, she asked if I wanted to hang out with her that night. I said yes, and she said that her and her roommates were going to the beach to have a fire. At our campus, it was right by a lake, and at one point of the lake there was a beach area and had spots set up for campfires. It was a sort of popular thing for the students to do. I had to work at my campus job until almost 9 p.m. that night, and told Jenna I could come afterwards, and she said that would be great. After work, I drove the 5 minutes or so to the beach and parked at one of the little parking lots. The park area was rather big, and I had never been there before. Jenna snapped me and told me that they were down at the far end of the beach away from the parking lot. She said she would turn on her Snapchat location for me to follow, and when she did, I saw that she was much farther down from where I had parked, but there were no other parking lots. I got out of my car and started to walk into the sand. It was really dark out there, and I had to use the flashlight on my phone to really see. At the end of the beach, there was a wooded area connecting the park to the beach. I walked along the water for a good 2 or 3 minutes looking out for anyone, but I wasn't seeing them. I saw on the snap map that I was getting closer to Jenna, but I wasn't there yet. I kept on walking, when suddenly, out of nowhere, I heard the sound of somebody walking towards me rather quickly. They were coming at me from the side near the woods, and I looked over and shined my light. For a split second, I saw the figure of a man, and he was walking right towards me, but as I shined the light on him, he darted to the side and away. I then looked over to him again, and saw that he was coming towards me aggressively now. I kept walking down the beach and tried to dodge away from him, until I felt the man start to grab me. I jumped away and ran quickly up towards the woods. I put my phone in my pocket so the man wouldn't be able to see where I was, and when I had separated myself from the man by a few feet, I turned to the direction that I had come from. I heard the guy running behind me on the beach. He was only a few feet behind me, but eventually I began to outrun him. I kept sprinting as fast as I possibly could, and somehow I made it back to where I had parked the car. I desperately got back inside of my car and drove off as fast as I could without looking back. When I had made it far enough away, I got back on Snapchat to call Jenna and tell her that there was a crazy guy on the beach who had chased me. When I went to call her, though, I was shocked. Jenna had blocked me. It was then that I realized Jenna likely wasn't who she said she was, and instead, she had set me up. I use Snapchat a lot to talk to friends. I never thought that I would have a scary experience on it. There have been times that people have added me and I didn't really know who they were, but nothing strange has ever happened. Usually it's either a bot or somebody who I've never heard from. Well, one day I got added by somebody on Snapchat who I didn't know. The name was very generic sounding. I believe it was John Johnson with no space between the first and last name. Seemed pretty fake to me. He immediately sent me a picture, which I opened. What I saw was a very close-up picture of a guy wearing a really creepy-looking mask. The mask fully covered his face and had almost white skin color and was smiling so that you could see all of the teeth. The eyes also appeared to be all white. It was very weird to see. I figured it was a joke. I did not send a picture back, but responded by asking who this was. He sent another picture of basically the same thing. I was creeped out by it and did not respond again. Instead, I just blocked his account. I didn't even know who he was, but I really didn't like him just sending me creepy pictures like that. After that, I was not added by any other accounts for the rest of the night. I also didn't get any more strange snaps either. But the story doesn't end there. I work an office job that's about 15 minutes away from where I live and right by the city. I'm there in the office every weekday. One day after work, I was leaving. I park in a parking garage that's attached to the building. I was up on the 3rd level. By now, there were still quite a few cars around, but it wasn't packed. As I got inside of my car, something caught my eye. There was a man walking through the parking garage, wearing the same mask that I had seen in the Snapchat. I didn't waste any time, and I drove away. I didn't want to see the guy get into a car and try to follow me or something. The whole way home, I couldn't believe that I had seen that. It had to be the same guy, and somehow he knew who I was. He was wearing the exact same creepy mask. After that day, though, I didn't see him again. I still don't know who that was. This story happened to me about 3 years ago. Back then, I was really into Snapchat, and I used it more than any other form of communication. I had a lot of friends on Snapchat, and a good number of them I didn't even know. They just had mutual friends, or maybe they went to the same school as me. I remember a girl named Nadia posted on her story that she was selling her MacBook Pro computer for $1,000. This was a pretty good deal, and I was in the market for a new laptop, so I responded to her story saying I was interested. I offered her $800, and we settled on $900. We agreed to meet the next day in the parking lot of a garden center just off a highway. It was about a 20-minute drive for me, and I arrived to see the place was pretty quiet, with about 5 to 10 cars in the parking lot. I snapped her and told her I was there. She responded by asking what kind of car I was in. I told her, and she said she would be right there. I looked around, but I didn't see anybody in the parking lot, just some empty cars. I was parked next to some trees and a dumpster on one end of the parking lot. I started to go on my phone when suddenly, out of nowhere, I heard something hit the back of my car. I turned around to see a man behind my car. Then I heard something come from the front end of my car, and when I looked, I saw another man out of my windshield. They both started hitting my car from the front and back. I scrambled to start my engine. The men tried to block me in by grabbing onto the front and end of my car so that I couldn't get out without hitting them. I was able to turn and push one of the men back just enough so that I had some space to turn and then back out. They both came running to my car and hit it a couple times, but I floored it and was able to get out of there. I drove straight home. When I got home, my car sustained some damage, but nothing too serious. I never bothered to report the incident because when I got back, of course, I was blocked by Nadia. I'm a female and graduated from high school a few years ago. This story took place during my junior year. At the time, like most people, I used Snapchat to talk to most of my friends and would be on the app all the time. One day, I was back home from school and happened to be home alone. Both of my parents were out shopping, and my younger sister was at her friend's house. I was just doing homework in my room that I really needed to get done, and playing music from my phone, which I had at my desk with me. I would occasionally go on my phone to snap my friends, or change the song. As I was on Snapchat, I accidentally swiped over too far and went to the snap map. I was about to go back, but then noticed that according to my snap map, my friend Abby was right outside of my house. I hadn't heard a knock on the door or anything like that, and it seemed really strange, because Abby went to school with me and was in my grade, but it wasn't like we were good friends or anything. In fact, I don't think I had ever hung out with Abby outside of school. I knew she lived in my same city, but didn't live in my exact neighborhood. I decided to send her a snap and ask her what she was doing at my house. After I sent it, before I could even put my phone down, I saw that she had opened the snap, but as I waited for her to respond, she never did. It was really strange that my snap map was showing her currently outside of my house. I looked out my bedroom window, but didn't see her or anybody. Then, I decided to leave my bedroom and look outside the front door where I would have a better view. When I got to the living room, I wasn't hearing or seeing anything. I walked towards the front door, and it was then that I thought I heard some movement coming from the back end of the house outside. I looked back over to the back door where I heard the noise. There wasn't a good view from outside where I was, so I couldn't immediately see anything. I walked over to the back door and looked outside of it. When I did, I didn't see anything at all. I went out the back door and looked around. I even called out for Abby, but I got no response. I then walked all around the yard looking before going back inside. I looked at my phone once again and now saw that Abby showed as being a few blocks away. I guessed that she had left. I decided to call her because it seemed so strange to me, but when I did, she didn't answer me. The next day, when I got to school, I decided to find Abby and ask her what she was doing at my house. I knew sort of where her locker was, so before class, I approached her and asked. When I did, she looked confused. She told me that she hadn't been there, and after telling her I saw her on my Snap map, she was even more confused. She said that she had lost her phone the previous day and thought that somebody had stolen it from her. Suddenly, it became much more creepy to me. That hadn't been Abby in my house, but somebody else. I went right back on my phone to look at her location on Snapchat, but the location of her account was now off. When I got home from school that day, I told my parents about what had happened. We all kept a close eye outside for the next few days, but luckily never saw anybody. I'm a 23-year-old female living in a 2-bedroom house with my roommate. I moved into the house last year. My roommate is one of my good friends from college who happened to take a job in the same city as me, which isn't very far from the college we attended together. I would use Snapchat every day and had a pretty large number of friends on there and people who I snapped. I would get added by guys that I didn't know quite a bit. Sometimes I wouldn't know them at all, and other times they would be guys that I went to school with or actually did know in some way. One night last summer, I was in my bedroom just chilling on my laptop when I casually looked at my phone to see a few Snapchat notifications. I saw that somebody had added me named Josh M. I didn't really think that I recognized him, but I wasn't quite sure, so I added him back and then was going to send him a snap asking who he was. But before I could, he beat me to it. He sent me a snap, and I opened it up. It was a picture of about half of his face, and he said, "Hey." He appeared to be in a dark area, and I couldn't tell much detail at all about him other than he was white with darkish hair. I sent him a snap back saying, "Do I know you?" He snapped me back almost immediately saying, "Yes, don't you remember me?" I asked him where I knew him from because I really didn't remember him. He just responded with a snap of his face and no words. I wasn't believing that he knew me at all, because after seeing more snaps of his face, he wasn't looking any more familiar. I didn't respond to him, but he sent me another snap a minute later asking me what I was doing. I told him nothing and asked him once again how he knew me. He didn't answer me this time either, and once again sent a blank snap of his face. He wasn't really making any sense, and when I left him on red again, he sent me another snap asking where I was. In that moment, I was happy to remember that I never had my location turned on in Snapchat, so nobody could ever tell where I was. I wanted to know more about this guy, so I clicked on his profile on Snapchat to see his username. But when I did, I noticed that he had his Snapchat location turned on. I then clicked on the map to see where he was and maybe get a better idea of where he was from. But when I did, I couldn't believe my eyes. He appeared to be right outside my house on the street. My heart suddenly started racing. My blinds were covering the windows of my bedroom so I couldn't see out. I decided to slowly walk over to them and carefully look out. I noticed a car parked on the side of the street. It was a little ways away, and I figured this had to be the guy. I then went back on my phone to see that he had snapped me again. I opened it and could now see that he was in a car. He asked me to stop leaving him on red, and at this point, I sent him a snap asking him where he was right now. I saw he opened the snap right away, but he didn't respond right away like he usually did. I waited several minutes, but he never did reply. I then looked back at the snap map, but he was now gone. He had turned his location off. I was afraid he had realized I was onto him and was now hiding. I slowly went back to the window, but when I looked out, the car was now gone. I was terrified. I now had no idea where he was and thought maybe he just parked down the street and was going to try to break into my house or something. I called my roommate to tell her what was going on, but I knew that she was at work and the chances of her picking up were slim. Sure enough, she didn't answer. I quickly went around the house making sure that all of the doors and windows were closed and locked. Thankfully, they all were. I went back into my bedroom and locked the door. I was just hoping that whoever this Josh guy was had actually left and wouldn't come back. About 20 minutes later, I heard a noise coming from my front door area. My heart started to pound even harder than it already was. I knew the door was locked though, so I was just hoping whoever was in there wouldn't try to break in. I got out my phone ready to call the police. Then, I heard the sound of the door opening. I couldn't believe it and I started to freak out, until finally, I heard the voice of my roommate. It was her coming home from work early and not the Josh guy. I was so relieved and went over and told her everything. We were both a little creeped out for the rest of the night, but the Josh guy never came back. The next day, the Josh user had been deleted from Snapchat. I never did find out who he was or why he was seemingly stalking me. This happened a few weeks ago. At about 10 p.m. on a Sunday night, my best friend texted me and asked me to come over. He said that a girl he had been Snapchatting wanted to come over and hang out, and she was bringing a friend, so I should hang out with them. He said we were all probably just going to sit and chill in the car and chat. I didn't really want to go, but he's my best friend and he's like a brother to me, so I thought, why not be spontaneous? I drove to his house and parked on the side of the road in front. He came out and got into the car with me. He said he had been Snapchatting with this girl for about a month, and she seemed pretty cool. He showed his Snap map to me, which showed the location of his friends if they had it on. The girl had hers on, and it showed her on a road, which was about 10 minutes away. My friend and I hung out for a while in my car, then checked on her Snap map again. It showed her in a city that was past us. My friend was confused as to where she was going, and so he sent her a snap. We waited several minutes for her to reply, but she never did. We checked her map again and saw her in the parking lot of a park, which was about 20 minutes away. My friend tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. It was now almost midnight, and we decided to call it off and both go home and go to bed. Just then, she snapped my friend back and said she was on her way. My friend decided to let her come over after all and said okay. About 20 minutes later, we saw a car pull up into the street and park about 20 feet behind us. My friend told her we were in a car and in front of her. We watched her get out, and when she did, we could see there was at least 3 large men in the car with her. "Did you see that?" my friend asked. "The men?" I said. "Yes," he responded. She got out and started to walk to our car. After she got about 10 feet, my friend told me to drive. I put the car in drive and pulled out of there. As I did, the girl looked pretty surprised and just stood there before the car she was in drove up to her and she got back in. I pulled off my friend's street and could see the car was starting to follow us. I turned as soon as I could and tried to lose the car. I drove a couple of miles toward the middle school that was near us, and I could barely see the car behind us. When I started to drive past the school, I could see a police car sitting in the parking lot, so I drove in and entered the parking lot. The car started to follow us and then drove past. We parked next to the cop, and he questioned us what we were doing. We told him the story, and when my friend went to pull up the Snapchat, he had already been blocked. The cop told us to go home, and we did. I'm glad my friend told me to drive, because I don't know what would have happened to us. This happened back when I was a college student. During that time, I shared a house with a roommate named Stephanie, and we each had our own bedroom. When I was in college, I used the Snapchat app on a daily basis. Quite a few of my friends are on Snapchat, not just from college, but from high school and other places as well. I snap with quite a few of them regularly. One night, I got added by someone new on Snapchat. When I looked at the username, I didn't know who it was. It was a guy, and I thought that possibly he had went to my school or something. Maybe I had met him at one point. At that time, I had been in college for a couple of years and had met lots of people in my time there. I added the user back, seeing that his Bitmoji was a pretty typical looking guy. Not long after this, I received a snap from him. I opened it, curious as to who he was and what he was sending me. It was just a blank picture of nothing really. It seemed to be all black. I wondered why he sent me this, but I just opened it and did not respond. A couple of hours went by. Now it was a little bit later at night. My roommate Stephanie was gone, and I was at home by myself and in my bedroom. I was doing some homework, but was planning to go to bed soon. I received another Snapchat from the same guy though. Like before, it was a picture. This time though, I opened it, and the picture looked like it was of my house, and the picture was taken from my street. When I saw this, I wondered how this person could be there. Did they know this was my house? I sent a chat to the guy and asked him what he was doing. He opened it, but did not immediately reply. I went to my bedroom window, which was covered, and lifted the blinds slightly to look outside. When I did not see anything. I couldn't see the whole street from my window, but did see part of it. I was hoping that maybe he was just walking by. And maybe this was one of my friends who actually knew me and was playing a joke. It seemed pretty unlikely for that to be the case though. Hopefully the guy was gone now. About 5 minutes or so went by. I had gone back to my homework and was just about done. I saw that I got another snap from the same guy though. This time, it was not a picture, but a chat. It said, "Open your front door." I got up and left my bedroom. Carefully, I walked over to the living room and looked out of the window that had a view of the front step. I saw a man standing there, right outside of the front door. From where I was, I couldn't see the guy's face, but about up to his shoulders, so I really didn't know who he was, but he didn't appear to be anybody that I recognized. I had no plans to open the door for him. I responded, asking who he was. He did not reply. I threatened to call the police. I said, "If you don't leave or tell me who you are, I will call the cops." He opened that, but did not respond to it. I watched him continue to stand at the front step. Then, after about a minute, I saw him leave the step and go to the left. It was out of my sight, and I hoped and assumed that he was leaving. I went to another window and looked out of it in the direction that he went. I didn't see anything though. This probably meant that he was gone now. For the next several minutes, I went around the house and looked out just about every side of it, but did not see the guy. This made me feel better, and I figured that he was gone. Then I went back into my bedroom. I should have gone to sleep right then, but I wasn't that tired anymore. It wasn't all that late either. I was done studying though, and went into my room and turned on my TV. About an hour later, I felt my phone vibrate next to me on the bed. I picked it up and saw yet another snap from the same guy. At first, I didn't want to open it, but ultimately, I decided to. It was a picture, and after opening it, I saw that it was a close-up of my bedroom window. I looked over to the window, but couldn't see out of it at all because of the thick blinds that I had. Then, I heard a knocking on the window. I took out my phone and dialed 911. I couldn't take it anymore. Then, I ran out of my bedroom and into the bathroom down the hallway. I locked the door and waited for the police to arrive. In the meantime, I blocked his account on Snapchat and did not want any more snaps from him. When I was inside the bathroom, I didn't hear anything after blocking the guy. He wouldn't be able to contact me, and I didn't hear any noises from the window or anything. I really had no idea what was going on. I just hoped that he wouldn't try to break into the house or anything. Eventually, the cops got there. It was only then that I finally left the bathroom. They told me that they found a man hiding in my backyard. He was a man that I did not recognize at all, and I'm not sure how he knew me or got my Snapchat. I did have my location on through Snap Maps though, which is how he knew where I lived. Since this incident, I only accept friends on Snapchat if I actually know them and who they are. I'm a female, and this is something that happened a while back when I was in high school. It was almost 10 years ago, and this was pretty early on into the school year. So randomly one day, I saw that I got added by somebody new on Snapchat. I looked and it was a guy named Michael something, but I didn't recognize his last name at all, so I did not add him back and I deleted it. Just a few days later, I got added on Snapchat by him again, and once more I deleted him. However, probably just a few days after the second time that I deleted the guy, I realized that he was actually in one of my classes and went to my school. I had never talked to him before, and he sat in the back middle of one of my classes while I sat towards the front and one side. So I would never really notice him much, but I did recognize him. He was a new student in the school, and prior to that class, I had never seen him before. Well, he added me again for a third time. This time I decided to add him back, just because I knew that he went to my school now and that he was new. I still did not know anything about him other than that. I was surprised though that he kept adding me, even after I would not add him back. Well, finally adding him was something that I would quickly regret. I think it was the very next day, early on in the school day, and he sent me a picture of himself. It was just a basic selfie pretty much, with no words. I responded sending one back, but he then sent me like 5 random pictures. We were both in different classes at the time. Some he took of other students, and others were just of the floor and whatever. I opened them up and did not reply because it seemed kind of weird. Later on in the day, we had the class that we were in together. This teacher did not like it when students would be on their phone during class, so I did not go on my phone at all during the class until the very end when we were done and all waiting for the bell to ring. When I did, I saw that there were tons of notifications on Snapchat from this Michael guy. I looked, and he literally sent me at least 20 pictures. I opened them all, quickly going from one to the next. They were all pictures of me that he took from where he was sitting. I found this pretty creepy. After opening them all and not responding, I decided to confront him in person. The bell rang at that point, but I caught up to him outside of the classroom in the hallway. I asked him why he had taken so many pictures of me in class. He just stood there not saying anything. I told him I thought it was really weird, and I was going to tell him not to do it again, but before I could, he just turned and ran away. It was very strange. Michael was now seeming like sort of a creep to me, and I decided to delete him on Snapchat, so I did. A few days went by, and I saw him in class, but didn't talk to him or anything. Then he added me on Snapchat again for a 4th time. This time, I blocked him. I really wanted nothing to do with the guy. Well, that very same day, I left school when it was over. I drove to and from school and had a car during this time. I remember that I left school, and when I was on my way home, I noticed that Michael was driving behind me. I had never noticed this before and was immediately suspicious. When I made it about halfway home, he was still behind me. I didn't think that he lived near me, and I figured that based on his previous behavior, he was possibly following me. When I had made it almost all the way home, he was still there, and after making it less than a mile from my house, I did not want to go any further, so I pulled over to the side of the street. Michael slowed down in his car but did not pull over. He ultimately drove past me and kept going. Then I went home. I didn't really know what to do about this whole deal. Over the next few days, I noticed Michael in class and I completely ignored him. Luckily, he didn't try talking to me or anything. He also did not add me again on Snapchat or try following me home. And probably a week or 2 after this, I stopped seeing him in class. Eventually, I asked around, and I found out that he apparently changed schools or something. I'm glad that he did. That whole situation is something that I would like to forget.
My name is Bree. When I went to high school, during my senior year, early on in the first semester, I remember noticing this one new kid in our school. I will call him Dave for this story. I had never seen him at our school before, and I had a history class with him. For the most part, that's all I knew of him. Beyond that, I didn't really notice him much at all. The next semester, I didn't have any classes with Dave. It was pretty early on in that second semester that one of my friends told me something shortly after I had gotten to school one day. She told me that Dave had been posting some really weird and borderline creepy Snapchat stories of me. Nobody in my friend group was friends with Dave on Snapchat, but apparently my friend had heard from a mutual friend about it. Somebody who was friends with Dave on Snapchat had seen his stories and found them really odd. When I asked for examples, I was told that he had occasionally taken photos of me in class or in the hallway without my knowledge. Other times, he would post random pictures and mention me for whatever reason. To me, this did seem pretty strange, and I felt like I should tell Dave to stop. But I knew this might be really awkward to do, or he might deny it altogether. I thought about it for a little while, but I never really saw Dave anymore anyways. I didn't have any classes with him anymore. Plus, I never saw him in the hallways in between classes either. Our school was pretty big, with about 2,000 students total. Over time, I just kind of ignored it. I figured that maybe he was a bit of a creep, or maybe he had a crush on me, but if he didn't see me anymore, he would get over it. Roughly 2 weeks after finding out about this, I was told once again by a friend that Dave had posted a weird story about me. My friend had actually befriended Dave on Snapchat to see his stories. He posted a picture of my car in the student parking lot, saying the caption, "My favorite girl's car." Obviously, I found this really weird, and I knew that I needed to ask Dave to stop. Unfortunately, I could never seem to find Dave in the hallways, and I didn't want to go out looking for him. I decided that I would just add Dave on Snapchat, just for the purpose of asking him to stop posting weird things about me. So that day, when I got home from school, I asked my friend for Dave's username, and she gave it to me. Once I added Dave, he added me back, and he immediately snapped me saying hi. I snapped him back, telling him that I was made aware of the strange things that he was posting about me, and that I needed him to stop doing so. He opened my snap, but didn't reply. Then, I deleted him. A couple of hours later, when I was in my bedroom, I suddenly heard a loud noise against my window. I had been at my desk finishing homework, which was about 5 feet from the window. I looked over to it, and there was another loud bang. This time, the window broke, and glass shattered everywhere. I jumped back and saw Dave standing right outside the window. He then started cursing at me. I was terrified. I already knew he did some creepy things, but this was really crossing the line. Then he came closer and started to crawl through the broken window. I jumped up and ran out of the room. My parents were home, but on the other side of the house in the living room. I ran over to them and was frantically screaming that somebody had broken in. Dave did not leave my bedroom, and after we called the police, he must have left because when they got there, he was gone. Thankfully, I knew exactly who he was, and he was found that same night. It was a bad idea for me to add him on Snapchat because my location was on, and I guess Dave could see exactly where I lived then. Since then, I've turned my location off, and I'm much more careful of who I add on Snapchat. Nothing else crazy like this has happened to me though. This story happened back when I was in college. Like many college guys, I used Snapchat quite a bit. I had probably over 1,000 Snapchat friends and would communicate with most of my friends through the app. I got to know a lot of my classmates better through snapping them or having snap streaks. Anyways, to get to the story, it all started one night when I was studying in my bedroom. I lived in a house with 2 roommates who were some good friends that I had made my freshman year. I had my own bedroom upstairs in the house, and so did each of my roommates. When I study, I tend to get distracted by my phone quite a bit, and when I looked at it on my desk, I saw somebody had added me on Snapchat. It was a girl named Kaylee. Her username didn't have a last name in it, just a bunch of numbers, so I wasn't quite sure who she was, but I figured that she went to my school, which is pretty large. I added her back, and I snapped her a picture of my face saying hi. She snapped me back, and she appeared to be around my age. We snapped back and forth for the rest of the night, and she told me that she also went to my university. The next night, I found myself home alone and bored. Both of my roommates went to their intramural sports games, and I had stayed home with an assignment, but I finished much earlier than I thought I would. I was still snapping Kaylee, and I told her about my situation. That's when she asked if I wanted her to come over. I really hadn't expected that, and I would have expected her to want to meet in a public place, or at least snap a few days before meeting, but I was cool with it. Kaylee asked me for my address, and I gave it to her. Both me and her were both on the Snap map, and it appeared that she lived on the other side of campus. Kaylee snapped me that she was leaving and would be at my place shortly. I went down and attempted to clean up the house a little bit. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I walked downstairs, expecting to see Kaylee, but instead saw some guy. There was a guy with a jacket and winter hat standing at the front door. I was really confused. I opened up the door crack and asked what the guy wanted. He told me that he was Kaylee's friend and had given her a ride to my house. He told me that Kaylee was in the car down the street, but he wanted to make sure it was safe and I wasn't some crazy person. He told me that he was just trying to look out for her and asked if he could come inside and look around. I was really weirded out by this. It caught me by surprise, and I told the guy to give me a second, and then I closed the door. I checked the Snap map, and it showed Kaylee as being literally right outside of my front door, right where the guy was standing. I knew this wasn't right. I snapped Kaylee, asking who the guy was. She began typing quickly, and as she was typing, I looked outside and saw the guy typing on his phone. Eventually, she sent me a chat, and it said basically the same thing that the guy had said. The guy then knocked on the door again. I yelled from the other side for the guy to just leave, and I wasn't falling for his tricks. I then watched him walk away, and thankfully, he left. About 20 minutes later, I got a snap from Kaylee. I opened it to see a picture of the guy flipping me off. I opened it but didn't respond. A short time later, I got another snap. This one was of the same guy saying, "You still fell for a fake girl, you effing idiot." I then blocked the account. He was right in the fact that I had fallen for a fake girl, but I had seen pictures of her and wondered how he had done it. After some research though, I learned that the guy probably got some type of app that allows you to send pictures of snaps of whatever you want without it appearing as an uploaded photo. It's complicated, but not too hard to figure out. All the guy needed was multiple selfies of the same girl. I had noticed that her selfie style was a little different, but I looked past it. This whole thing was kind of embarrassing for me, but I'm just happy to say that I'm okay.
This happened just last year. I'm a pretty average guy for the most part. I work a job and I have my own little apartment near the city. One day I was added by a seemingly random girl on Snapchat. This is not something that happens very often. My first thought was actually that it was a bot account probably. Still, I was curious, so I decided to add the account back anyways. Well, within probably 20 minutes of adding it back, the account sent me a snap. It was a woman named Avery, and when I opened the snap, I saw a selfie from a good-looking blonde woman who appeared to be around my age. She said hi. I responded sending one back of myself and saying hi. She then typed in the chat instead of sending back another picture. Avery told me that she didn't know if I knew her or not, but she went to my gym and occasionally saw me there. I would work out every day at usually around the same time, which was right after I got off of work. There were lots of regulars that I would see at the gym, as well as other people who I did not know. A lot of people went there and it was a pretty large gym. However, I never really talked to anybody there before and wasn't friends with anyone. I thought about if I had seen her before, and I didn't necessarily remember her exactly, but I thought maybe she looked kind of familiar. She also told me that she wanted to talk to me at the gym, but didn't want to bother me. We got to talking, and it seemed like she liked me. She was very nice, and we had a few things in common. I tried to look her up on Instagram, but I couldn't find any results. There were a few accounts that possibly could have been her, but I didn't know her last name. I couldn't really find anything. After talking for 2 days on Snapchat, Avery asked me if I wanted to meet up sometime. I agreed and said yes. Avery said that she worked at a local bar which was downtown in our local city. She said that I should come and meet her after work that night, and said there was a park right across the street from the bar and we could go there. I agreed, and she said that she got off at 9 p.m. I didn't really think at the time that it was strange to hang out in a park at nighttime. Looking back, it was kind of weird, but I drove to the park and got there. When I did, I went into the parking lot and saw that there was just one other car. I didn't know if this was Avery or not because I was a couple of minutes early. I texted her, but did not immediately hear back, so then I just waited. But after 10 minutes, I was wondering what she was doing. Then she finally texted me back, saying that she was in the park and I should join her. It just seemed sketchy. I told her I was in my car, and I never saw her driving there, and now she was just in the park? The only thing that would make sense is if the other car belonged to her. I had a bad feeling though. For a moment, I didn't know what to do, and I thought about just leaving, but I decided to stay. However, about a minute later, I saw somebody get out of the other car that was there. It was a man wearing a hooded jacket. He began walking over in my direction. I did not know what he wanted or what was going on. So the guy walked all the way over to me, and when he was approaching my window, I just took off. I realized then that I had likely been catfished. After leaving, I blocked the account. I was frustrated by the whole thing, but at least I didn't get robbed or anything, or who knows what would have happened. Looking back, it was strange how she didn't give me any real clear information. I could not find a Facebook or Instagram for her, and she only sent me one picture of herself. It honestly seemed real, and I don't know how that was done, but I know for sure that I've been catfished. Hopefully nothing like this happens again. I have a lot of Snapchat friends. It's an app that I've used since I was probably in middle school. Over the years, I've gained countless friends. Most of them I know, but there's a good number that I also don't know. I think that happens on just about every social media. So I remember that on my Snapchat, there used to be this one guy that would often post really strange stories, and I didn't even know what he looked like or who he was. I don't even know how or when we became friends. But this guy would post stories that I would occasionally see. They would never be of his face or anything. Most of them were just videos of him walking late at night, and he would just show sometimes his feet and the surroundings of where he was going. It would always be strange because there was no context around it. So after seeing those a few different times, it made me wonder when I even became friends with this guy on Snapchat. I really didn't remember. After one night I saw him post a video, I actually slid up on his story. He had posted what appeared to be him walking through the woods. I texted him saying, "Why do you always post these stories of you walking at night?" I was legitimately curious, but he left me on read. That was really strange. Well, a couple of nights later, he was back at it again with another story. This one was very similar to the typical ones of him walking at night, except this time, I noticed the location of where he was appeared to be my driveway, because he was walking up it, and I saw my car parked where it always was. My heart started racing instantly when I saw it. I saw that the story had been posted just 5 minutes ago. I got up and looked out of every window in my house. I didn't see the guy anywhere. After not locating him, I actually went out my front door to go look outside. I went around my house and looked, but did not see anything. Then I went back inside. I texted the guy once again, asking why he was at my house. Once more, I was left on read. This guy was really starting to make me angry. Still, I didn't know what else I could do about it. Shortly after that, I went to bed. The next morning when I woke up, I went on Snapchat shortly after, like I often do. When I did, I saw that there were several more stories that the guy added from the previous night. One was another one of him walking up my driveway. Then there was another. This time he was in my backyard. By then, I was very creeped out. Then he showed another story. It was him somehow opening one of my back windows from the outside. Then it showed him entering my house. After that, the story stopped. When I saw this, I got up, ran to my bedroom door, and closed it. Then I locked it. I was afraid that he was still inside. I called the police and told them the story. When they arrived, they searched my entire house. The guy was gone, though. He must have left sometime in the night. I gave them the information that I could. The police also saw that my back door was left unlocked, so that's most likely how he left. My back window was somehow left unlocked as well, I guess. I blocked the guy on Snapchat after this. I lived in that house for a few more months and never saw him again after. Since then, I haven't heard from him. I wonder if he's still posting those creepy stories. The fact that he got into my house, though, is something that will always give me the creeps. I am a 19-year-old female and just recently graduated high school last year. This was by far the scariest thing to ever happen to me in my life. It all started midway through my senior year. I was relatively popular in high school, and I would get added on Snapchat by new people almost every day. I had so many friends on Snapchat that I didn't even know a good number of them. I was home alone, relaxing in bed and watching Netflix while my parents were out shopping. I casually went on Snapchat and saw that I had several new snaps. One of them was from some username that I didn't recognize. I didn't know who this was, but I occasionally got snaps from people that I didn't know, and if I didn't want to talk to them, I'd just delete them and it was no problem. After responding to a few of my friends, I opened up the snap from the user that I didn't know to see who this was. Their username was pretty strange. It was like a bunch of random letters and then numbers that didn't spell any words or anything. When I opened up the snap, it was a video of a house. The video started by showing the house from the street and then zooming in towards a window. When I looked at the video for the second time, I saw that the house was mine. It was nighttime in the snap, just as it was outside, so it seemed to have just been taken. This immediately creeped me out,
and I went from being relaxed to outright scared. The snap had been sent from the user 22 minutes ago, so I was hoping they had left, but just to be safe, I slowly looked out my window towards the street. When I did, I couldn't see anyone or anything. It all seemed quiet like a normal night. That made me feel a little bit better, but then I got another Snapchat from the user. With my hands shaking, I went to Snapchat and opened it up to see. It was another video. This time, it showed the inside of a basement, which I immediately recognized to be mine. We had an unfinished basement that had dim lighting, and I recognized the light fixture to be ours. I quickly ran to my door and locked it. Then I quietly listened next to my door for any noises as I dialed 911 on my phone. I whispered into the phone as the operator answered, and I explained to them what was going on. I then went into my closet and hid. I was told the police would arrive in 10 to 15 minutes. That was not what I wanted to hear at all, because it seemed like such a long time. The first 5 minutes went by, and they felt like an hour, but I didn't hear any noises or anything. Then I got another Snapchat from the user. I didn't care, and I wasn't going to open it because I knew it would only make me scared. But then I started to get more and more snaps from the person, and they were blowing up my phone. After that, they tried calling me. I stuffed my phone into some of my clothes and just waited for the police to arrive. A couple of minutes went by until I heard the terrifying sound of my bedroom doorknob being turned. I was glad I had locked the door, but I didn't know if whoever this was would be able to break it down or not. Just as I was thinking this, I heard one extremely loud bang from the door, and at the same time I heard this, I heard the sound of sirens off in the distance. There was not another bang, and instead I heard the noise of someone running away. I stayed hiding in the closet until the police arrived, and when they did, the man had run away. I was just grateful to be alive and well. The police stayed with me until my parents arrived home, and the person who was in our house ended up being caught about an hour later. He turned out to be a guy who had gone to my high school 3 years before me and had stalked me from my Snapchat to see where I lived. I don't know why he broke into my house, but he got in through a basement window. I figured I didn't hear it because I had my headphones in when I was watching Netflix. I later got the courage to look at the final snaps he sent me, and they were chilling. The first one was a video of my bedroom door with him approaching. Then, there was a picture of my door with the words "Come out" in all caps. And finally, he sent a picture of his face with an extremely creepy smile.
A few months ago, my best friend Joe and I got invited to one of our other friends' birthday parties. Unfortunately for me, I had to work that night, and I wasn't able to go. However, afterwards, Joe asked if I'd pick him up, and then he'd buy me food. I said sure, because I was always down for free food. I guess they had the party at a bar downtown in the major city that we live near. I was kind of bummed that I had to work, because as I was at work, I saw a few Snapchat stories of some of my friends, and it looked like a pretty good time. When I finally got off of work at about 10:30 p.m., I got a Snapchat from Joe saying he was ready for me to come pick him up. We mainly communicated through the text chat on Snapchat. I told him that I was on the way and asked him where to pick him up from. He then sent me his location on the Snap map, and I could tell the general area where it was. I asked him for a specific address, but he just said to follow his Snapchat location. This made it a little bit harder with no address, but I could still do it. I drove to the area, which was about 15 minutes from where I was. I got to where Joe was on the Snap map, but it was in what appeared to be a back alley behind several businesses. It didn't really look like bars though, just more like warehouse or apartments or something like that. I told Joe I was there, and he said he would be out in a minute. Then he sent me a snap saying he couldn't find me and asked me to get out of my car. I was wondering what Joe's problem was because I thought he was acting really strange. I parked my car and got out. I wasn't intending on being out of my car for long, just enough to call out for Joe to see if I could see where he was. But what happened instead
was I saw 3 men start to run out from the building that I was next to. They were running straight for me. I quickly got back inside of my car and locked the door before the men reached me. Thankfully, I hadn't gone more than 2 steps from my car, or I wouldn't have made it back. I had no idea who these men were, but they were now trying to open my doors and all shouting at me. I sped away as fast as I could and drove all the way home. I contacted a few of my other friends who had been with Joe that night, and it was told to me that Joe had lost his phone at the bar earlier. I realized someone must have took it. I was now pretending to be Joe and communicating with his contacts. I went to the police and told them everything. Joe's phone was found cracked and in a dumpster a week later. Joe was able to get a new phone, but I don't think they ever found out who the men were who took it and chased after me.
This happened about 5 years ago. I was 16 at the time, and like most high school kids, I was on Snapchat almost 24/7. It was the way that I communicated with all my friends, and I had like 20 different streaks with people. I still use Snapchat today, in fact, but not quite to the same level. Anyways, one night, I was in my bedroom just watching TV and snapping friends. I lived with my parents at this time, as well as my older sister. I remember that I was on the app and I saw someone new added me. It was a girl named Sophie, so without even looking at her profile or anything, I added her back. I didn't recognize her name, but I thought that maybe she went to my school or we had mutual friends. I didn't know why else somebody would add me. Also, without giving it much thought, I sent her a selfie without any words. I wanted to see who she was. She responded back within a minute, except it was not a picture of her face. She was outside and it was nighttime, so I couldn't see much. It looked like she was in somebody's backyard and there was a house. After like 5 seconds of looking at it though, I realized it. This was my house. I was so confused. The picture did not have her in it at all. It was just a picture of my house. I got up and went over to my bedroom window, which did look out to the backyard. However, we did not have good lighting back there. The backyard light was off, and there were numerous trees in the yard. I couldn't see anything. I kept looking though. Then I snapped the girl back, but instead of a photo, I sent a message. I asked who she was and why she was in my yard. Then, as I was still looking into the backyard, I saw a flash of light quickly come out from behind a tree. Then it went away. I barely saw a person sort of behind it, but I didn't get a good look at them at all. Then I got the snap of the picture that I had just seen being taken. It was a flash photo this time of the back of my house again with no words. I was so confused. I continued to look out the window. Then I saw what appeared to be a man run out from behind the tree and then hop the fence into the neighbor's yard. I couldn't see very well at all. It was literally just enough to distinguish that it was probably a guy, partly from the looks and partly from movement. I couldn't tell how old this person was or anything. It happened so fast. I was really freaked out, but told myself that maybe it was a prank by one of my friends. After that, I went around the house and covered every window and double-checked all the locks. Then I went back to my room. When I got there, I saw that I had a voice recording sent to me on Snapchat by the same user. I say user because at this point, I was sure that it wasn't the girl it appeared to be on Snapchat. I played the recording. It was the sound of a man laughing, and he seemed older than high school age. I was so creeped out. I started snapping all my friends, telling them about it. None of them seemed to have any idea who it was, as if it might have been a prank or something. After that, I blocked the user. For a few weeks, I felt paranoid, wondering if somebody else would add me, or if someone would show up in my backyard, but nobody did. I still wonder who did that and why.
I used to walk to school with my 2 friends Mike and George every day in high school. We lived on the same street and only about 10 minutes from school, so it was nice. One day, we stopped at George's house to see a new car that his dad had gotten. We ended up losing track of time a little bit while doing so, and we all realized that we were going to be late. Because of this, we all decided to run the whole way to school. We were athletic kids, so we ended up making it to our classes on time. But after our first classes of the day, George told us that he had lost his phone. He said it must have fallen out of his pocket while we were all running, and on our way home that day, we retraced all of our steps. We weren't able to find the phone, however, so Mike called George's phone. but there was no answer. We waited some time and then called again, but this time the call got declined after 2 rings. This meant that we knew somebody had the phone and didn't want to answer us. This made George mad, but he then told us how he always had his location on in Snapchat, and we got excited that maybe we would be able to locate his phone this way. We looked on Snapchat, and sure enough his location was still on. We saw that his phone had been on a street about 10 minutes ago, and George's Bitmoji was in a car, meaning whoever had his phone was driving. We needed them to log into Snapchat again to see where the location would update to. So I decided to send a snap to the person saying, "Hey, I think you have my friend's phone. He lost it earlier today and we just want to get it back." A short time later, the snap I sent was opened, but nobody replied. This was concerning. However, we looked again at the snap map, and we were happy to see that the location was still on. But we saw that George's phone appeared to be in the middle of a woods. It was pretty strange to see, but George was furious, and by this time we figured 3 high school dudes would be able to take on whoever had George's phone if they wanted trouble. We all set out to the location, and when we arrived, we saw that it was a state park with a trail going out to the woods. It didn't look like the trail was used much, because there was grass growing all over it. We all followed the snap map and walked deeper and deeper into the woods. I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous. Finally, we saw ourselves getting close, and we came around a corner on the path to see George's phone. But the phone was literally hanging from a tree by a string, dangling there. We all stopped in our tracks and froze. I got a bad feeling. We stood there and stared at it for a good 10 seconds. Then, the phone jiggled around from the string being pulled, as if to encourage us to go grab the phone. It looked like some kind of a trap, and I had a strong feeling come over me that I needed to leave. The 3 of us turned and ran as fast as we could out of there and didn't look back. We got back into my car quickly and jumped inside and backed up. As we did, I saw 3 large men start to emerge from the woods entrance. We didn't stop and drove all the way home. George immediately disabled everything on his phone and reported it as stolen. He was able to get a new phone the next day. I don't know what would have happened to us if we had attempted to get the phone there in the woods, but I'm glad that we didn't.
I'm a female and in college. This all happened about 6 months ago. I've had a Snapchat since I was in middle school and have more friends on that app than I can even count. I get added by new people all the time, and I usually accept the people who add me, but that has since changed. I would post stories occasionally when I was with friends or whatever. One time, a guy screenshotted my story who I didn't know. I didn't really think much of it though, until it happened again. When it did, I clicked on his profile, and I really had no idea who the guy was or when we had become Snapchat friends. He didn't have a Bitmoji, so I had no idea what he looked like. I searched his name on Instagram and Facebook, but it was a pretty common name and brought back no useful results. After that, I moved on. The next time I posted a story, he screenshotted it again though. This time, I sent him a message and asked him why he always screenshotted my stories. He opened up my Snapchat a very short time later and replied with a picture. I opened it up and was extremely creeped out. It was a picture of his wall that had countless photos of me taped to it. I saw many of the photos that I had posted on Instagram and all of my recent Snapchat stories. There were also some pictures from my Facebook and basically any photo of me that was online. But it got worse. There were some photos of me on his wall that I didn't remember being taken, like just pictures of me walking. I took a screenshot of the picture that he sent me, and then I blocked his account. I couldn't believe what I had seen. Then, I made my Instagram and Facebook accounts private. But that's when I realized maybe this guy was already one of my followers or friends. I searched his name on Facebook, and sure enough, we were friends. I showed his profile to my parents and told them about what had happened. That's when I learned something very creepy. They told me that he was one of our neighbors and lived just down the street. We live in a pretty large neighborhood, and I definitely didn't know all of our neighbors. I only know a few. I guess my dad had helped him snowblow his driveway a few years back. I couldn't believe it. My dad went over to talk to the guy, but he denied everything. I blocked the guy on all social media, and I hope I never see him again.
This is something that happened about 4 years ago. It all started when I got added by this random guy on Snapchat. I think his name was John something. I don't remember exactly, but I didn't immediately recognize his name or anything. Still, I added him back and didn't think too much of it. During this time, I was in college working on my master's degree. With the 5+ years that I had spent in college and the various jobs that I worked, I figured he maybe knew me from somewhere. I also had quite a few friends on the Snapchat app. So anyways, a few days went by after this. One day I was at home in my apartment, and for some reason I looked onto the Snap map. This map shows you and all of your friends' locations if they have it turned on. Well, I noticed that there was a guy on the Snap map seemingly in my apartment complex. It was the guy who had recently added me. I figured that maybe he lived there as well. He did not have his last name on his Snapchat, so I didn't know who he was or how to find out. After that, the next day, I happened to be on the other side of town with a couple of friends. We were at a park working out, and it was kind of a popular area. There were quite a few other people there, and shortly before leaving, I looked on my phone and I looked at the Snap map again. I remember that my friends and I were seeing where another one of our friends was. Well, I noticed that the same guy was at the park. He did not appear to be right next to me, but was pretty close. I looked around, and I didn't know what he even looked like, but I also didn't notice anything strange. Within my sight, there were probably at least 20 different people. Maybe this was just a coincidence, but it seemed kind of odd to me. Things got even stranger though. I started to get curious, and when I got home, I looked on my Snap map again. Once more, the guy was seemingly right outside of my apartment a short time after I got home. The next day, I went to the grocery store, which was just a couple of miles away from my place. When I was there, I randomly had the thought to look on the map. I thought, there's no way this guy's gonna be here as well. But when I looked, he was there, and according to the map, was in the parking lot. Now, the locations on Snapchat only update when you're on the app, and they're also not always 100% accurate with location, but they're usually pretty close. I looked around the store for the rest of the time that I was there. I honestly couldn't tell where the guy was though. I didn't even know what he looked like. But this was very suspicious, and I started to wonder if he even lived in my apartment complex, or was he possibly stalking me? When I got home that night, I looked on the map almost immediately. The guy appeared on the map seemingly right outside of my place again. Now I decided to ask him some questions. I sent him a chat on Snapchat asking who he was and how he knows me. After sending the chat, I went into my settings and then turned my location off. Then I saw that the guy had opened my message, but had seemingly left me on red. I was very confused, so I just blocked the guy. Several minutes went by. I lived on the first floor of my apartment building. I was in my living room, and then there was suddenly a knock at my window. It was coming from my bedroom. I went inside, and as soon as I did, saw this man standing there looking into my window. I had never seen him before in my life. This was the guy who added me on Snapchat? I moved out of the room, but he continued to knock on my window, and the knocking was seeming to get louder. I decided to call the police. This guy was appearing to stalk me or something, so I told the police what was going on, and they said that they would be there shortly. Meanwhile, the man at the window had mostly stopped knocking by then. I went into my bedroom to look, and I no longer saw him there. After looking out of the window, it seemed as though he had left. But just moments after that, I heard the sound of somebody trying to open the front door to my apartment. It was locked, and that was followed by a knock at the front door. I stayed in my bedroom. After that one knock, though, I didn't hear anything else. Things were quiet until the police got there maybe 5 to 10 minutes later. After that, I spoke to them and gave them every bit of information that I could. Unfortunately, it seemed like the man had left, and since then, I've never heard from him again. I had a really scary experience a couple of years ago. Now, during this time, I was back at my parents' house for the summer after my freshman year of college. I have a best friend named Jake. He lived like 2 blocks away, and we would walk to each other's houses all the time. We'd play video games together and had played on the same basketball team in high school. One night that summer, I was at home and in my bedroom. I had recently got back from my part-time summer job that I had. When I went on Snapchat to respond to some snaps and see what was going on with my friends, I saw that Jake had posted a story. Jake would occasionally post Snapchat stories like most friends, but he wasn't known to post anything that crazy or that many Snapchat stories. Jake is known as a pretty calm guy, and what I saw that he posted was really odd and out of character for him. There was like 10 Snapchat videos with a few pictures as well. Each one was really random and hard to tell what it was. Some appeared to be of the ground at nighttime, others the floor of a house, and you could see a few other people's feet. I couldn't tell who anybody was though. I also couldn't make out anybody speaking in the videos. It was just really bizarre and unlike him to be posting this. I slid up on his story responding to it and asked him what was going on. Within minutes, he had seen my response to his story and opened it but did not reply. The stories had all been posted about an hour earlier, and I wanted to know what was going on, so I decided to go over to his house. Even though it was like 10 o'clock at night, we were that close of friends. I walked the 10 minutes that it took to get to his house, and then knocked on his front door. Jake answered it and asked me what was up. I told him that I saw his stories on Snapchat and was wondering what was going on. He told me that he didn't post anything on Snapchat. Jake went on to say that he lost his phone earlier that morning and tried to find it, but he couldn't. He asked me what was posted to his story. I went inside and we both went over the stories that were posted to his account. I showed them to him, and he realized that somebody must have found his phone and took it. Now they were posting to his Snapchat. Based on the Snapchat videos and pictures, there really wasn't much to go on. We were not that good of detectives to see where the people were. We also didn't know why on earth anybody would post these stories at all. Then, we suddenly remembered the Snap map. Jake had his location turned on. We both figured out whoever took the phone probably turned it off, but we looked anyways just in case. When we did, we saw that his location was actually still on. It showed exactly on the map where his phone was, and it was only about 10 minutes ago that it had been used there. We both compared it to Google Maps and soon had the exact address. It was a house that was maybe a 10-minute drive from where we were. Jake and I both decided to go to the house. We left Jake's house and got into his car. Then we followed the directions to get to the address. None of us had been to that neighborhood before. When we got there, we saw that it did not appear to be the best neighborhood. The houses were small and not very nice looking. They seemed run down, and the yards were overgrown, and we saw several broken down looking cars. Nevertheless, we parked on the side of the road in front of the house. We both got out and walked up to the front door. Then, we confirmed that this was in fact where his phone had been, and it was. Jake firmly knocked on the front door. After a few seconds, we saw the curtains from the front window open for just a split second. We looked over to see somebody ducking back and closing the curtains quickly. They clearly didn't want to be seen. Jake then shouted from the other side of the door. He said that he lost his phone earlier in the day, and the location was showing it to be here. He said that the only thing he wanted was his phone back, and they could just throw it out the door to him and we would leave. We got nothing in response. But about a minute later, we heard a noise from behind the house. Somebody was back there and outside. Now, this was a really bad idea, but we decided to go around back. We left the front step and walked around the side of the house. We hadn't even made it around to the backyard yet when Jake spoke again. He said basically the same thing that he had said before. He really wanted his phone returned to him and was mad that somebody had took it, so I can't really blame him. All of a sudden, though, we heard some yelling and the sound of people running. There were man's voices, and they were telling us to get the F out of here. I saw for a brief second at least 3 men running full speed at us. Jake and I just took off. The guys were a ways back, but approaching quickly. We ran into the front yard and then into the street. The guys were going so fast behind us that we wouldn't be able to make it to Jake's car and get inside of it on time. Instead, we were forced to run past his car and down the street. We were both decently fast guys, but the people behind us seemed to be almost as fast. We made it to the end of that street and then ran to the next one over. The guys behind us seemed to stop chasing us at that point. There was a little park, and we ran in there and hid behind some trees. We stopped and caught our breath, and we tried to figure out what to do. We stayed there for maybe 5 minutes and then carefully headed back to Jake's car. When we got to his car, we didn't see anybody outside or near the house. After that, we just left. We went back to Jake's, and he said that he would just have to buy a new phone. At least we tried to get it back. Looking back at that night, we probably should not have gone to the house. It could have been really dangerous, but we didn't think about it going into the situation. The location from Jake's phone was turned off after, so I don't know what happened to it. I do know that Jake ended up getting a new phone though.
The story I'm about to tell you isn't like the other stories you might hear about someone getting stalked or followed. Unfortunately, I was the stalker, and I was the one following somebody. I'm not proud of who I was in the past, but I can't change it, so I just accept it and tell my story. Maybe there are others out there who will stop being like who I was. So this happened about 6 years ago, so it's not who I am anymore, but I used to stalk people whenever I got the chance. I had a particular interest in certain individuals, but I could never really find the right person to engage in with any type of stalking way. That was until one day I decided to download Snapchat. I heard it was a good way to make friends, so I added all the close people I knew. They never knew what I was up to when I was home alone. Nobody did, and that's what I liked. I like to stalk people. There's a mentality that goes into being someone who likes to stalk people. As I said, I downloaded Snapchat and started adding my friends. One of them was named Emily. I had no interest in Emily, and I was fine with that. I really liked our friendship. But I think that I typed a few numbers wrong, and I ended up adding a random Emily instead. I didn't notice until that night when I got a snap from her, and it looked nothing like Emily's house or anything familiar. I thought about deleting her, but after a few conversations, she sent a snap of her face, and it was perfect. Her hair, the way she looked, everything I ever fantasized about. This was at the peak of my stalking phase. I immediately started asking her questions like I was genuinely interested in being her friend. But honestly, I just wanted information so I could scour the internet. She told me her last name and the city she lived in, and that was all I needed to find everything. Her parents, the inside of her house through Zillow. I also knew her dog, her schedule, everything about her. I probably knew more about her than her parents did. At this point, I knew what college she went to, and most importantly, where she lived. That fueled me as the stalker I was. I played it cool. She had no idea I was so obsessed with her. We talked, and to my surprise, she only lived about 30 minutes away. What are the odds, I thought. But honestly, in my mindset back then, I felt like it was meant to be. We kept talking, and I asked to meet up with her for some snacks. Something harmless so she wouldn't figure out my true intentions. She agreed. When the day came, I got all dressed up in my nicest clothes and looked as handsome as I could. We went out for ice cream. It was casual, but I didn't want to let the chance of something deeper slip away, so I pursued her with interest. She seemed to really like me. Honestly, after the first time we went out, we texted each other all night, literally until 2 a.m. It was that cheesy love type stuff. Things were going so well that the lines started to blur between my obsession and actual love, but I had just met her, so I knew something wasn't right. From her perspective, I was just a really nice guy interested in her, but from mine, I had a different agenda. Even when I told myself I didn't, I'd get in my car, drive 30 minutes out, stop at a gas station to get snacks, and park down her road. I parked where I could barely see her house, but just enough to see her room, which was on the back side of her house. I never got caught. I saw her talking to her friends and hanging out with them. I never saw anything inappropriate like her getting dressed. I thought that was too far, and I respected that boundary. But my obsession grew stronger and stronger. Stalking turned into an unbearable urge to act. I started going insane. I checked her social media constantly, analyzed her posts, and tried to decipher her tweets. That's when jealousy hit me, hard. One night, she tweeted a cryptic message about somebody making her feel a certain way. I knew it wasn't me because we had only met once. The anger consumed me. I did what no normal person would do. I figured out a way to get her passwords. I asked her a ton of questions, and I slipped in a password-related question as a joke. Eventually, I got her password. I made sure to only sign in when I was near her house, so it wouldn't seem suspicious. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get someone's Wi-Fi password. Once I was in, I read through all her DMs and messages, just to make sure there wasn't anyone else, and boy was I wrong.
there was this guy named Brad, and he was everything I wasn't. I couldn't let that happen. I hopped on her messages and threatened him, pretending to be her. I said things like, "If you ever talk to me again, I'll call the police. Don't ever speak to me again. I hate you." I deleted the messages and blocked him. Honestly, I don't think she ever noticed, because she ended up messaging one of her best friends saying, "I think Brad blocked me." I was in the clear. At this point, I felt like I should have backed away from stalking. It was no longer harmless or fun. It was dangerous, for me and for her. But I didn't stop. We hung out again, staying up super late and getting breakfast together. Everything seemed fine. She smiled at me, and I knew I was in too deep. We went home and texted again, this time calling until 3 a.m. and falling asleep on FaceTime. It felt amazing, innocent even, but I couldn't let innocence be a part of me because I wasn't innocent. One night, I reached my breaking point. I wanted to break into her house just to see her. I couldn't stay away another second. I knew everything, when her parents weren't home, when they worked, and their schedules. At 4 a.m. on Tuesday, I made my move. I got in my car, drove to her house, put on a ski mask, and approached her home. I don't know what it was, guilt, a second thought, or a small part of me that still had decency, but I couldn't do it. I touched the window, found it open, and could have slid right in. But instead, I closed it, made it look like it was never open, and then went back to my car. I took off my mask and gloves, blocked her number, and drove home. I couldn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling. Maybe it's because I had lost myself. Maybe it's because I became the monster I swore I'd never be. To this day, she has no idea how close I was, and I'm happy she doesn't. I hope she's living a happy life with people who truly love her. As for me, I've changed, and I don't do anything like that anymore. I'm not proud of who I was, but it's part of my past.
This story happened to me just a couple of months ago. I'm a guy and I'm in college. It's been a few years since I graduated high school, but I still sometimes add friends from high school, or they add me here and there. One night, as I was playing video games, I saw a Snapchat notification. I looked at it and saw that I had been added by a girl named Mackenzie. I added her back, not knowing who she was. I figured maybe she went to my college or something. After I added her back, she actually sent me a text through Snapchat, and I opened it. She said, "Hey." I responded back saying hi. She then responded almost immediately with, "Do you remember me? We went to high school together." I responded back asking her what grade she was, because I really didn't remember her, and I knew basically everybody that I went to high school with. She then said to me that she graduated the same year as me, 2017. Now this made me slightly skeptical, because I graduated in 2018, not 2017, and I told her that. She then told me that she meant to say 2018, but it was a typo. Overall, we talked a short time, but something just seemed fishy to me. Then, after just about 10 minutes of awkward chatting, she asked if I wanted to hang out, and that's when I knew this was probably not a real girl. I looked at her profile, and her Snap score was actually decently high, but there was no indication of any last name, so I couldn't look her up anywhere. I decided I just didn't want to take a chance with it, so I left her on red and went to sleep. The next day, I had forgotten all about it and went throughout my day, doing all the normal things I would do on a Saturday, such as mowing the lawn and playing more video games. Sometime in the afternoon, I got another Snap from the girl. I opened it up and saw a picture of me mowing the lawn, taken from inside a car that was driving down my street. It had the words on the Snap that said, "Consider this a warning." I immediately deleted the user and blocked them. I told my parents about it, and they seemed a little concerned, but we didn't go to the police or anything. Over the next few days, I was sort of scared, but nothing else happened at all. I just don't know why this person was messing with me, but I'm glad it's over.
I'm a male, and this happened when I was a freshman in college. I went to a pretty average-sized university. As a freshman, I was required to live in the dorms. These were a few buildings that had maybe 5 floors each. The rooms were small, but they were decent and I was lucky enough to have my own room. This meant that I would not have to have a roommate at all. So like many college students, I would use the Snapchat app all the time and I communicated with most of my friends there. Not long into my first semester, this one girl added me. Her name was Lily. After she added me, I assumed that she probably went to the same school. I had 5 classes, and some of them had over 100 people in it. I didn't know Lily off the top of my head if she was in a class with me or something, but I figured that she probably was around campus. Not long after I added her back, she sent me a snap. When I opened it, I saw that she appeared to be around my same age. I snapped her back and we got to talking a little bit. She told me that she also went to my school. We snapped on and off for the next couple of days. I never saw her on campus or anything, but there were thousands of students. She seemed cool and I was enjoying getting to know her. But then things changed. One night I was by myself in my dorm room. I had just finished homework and was playing some Madden on my PlayStation. I got a snap from Lily in this time. She said that she was in my dorm building and wanted to come by and say hello. I thought this was a little bit strange. I mean, I had never met her in person before, and I didn't know why she happened to be in my building. Still, I figured why not, and I gave her my room number. So about 5 minutes after this, there was a knock on my door. I got up from my chair and walked over, but before opening the door, I decided to just look through the peephole. When I did not see Lily standing there. Instead, I saw these 2 large men, and they were not even college-aged men. These guys had to be in their 30s or 40s. I was so confused. Obviously, I didn't answer the door, and thankfully it was locked. I went on to Snapchat, and there was a message from Lily. She said, "I'm at the door, let me in." I told her, "No, there's 2 big guys at the door. I don't see you at all." She then opened that, but did not reply. Then I watched as her Snapchat character went away on the screen, meaning that I had just been blocked. I realized that she probably wasn't who she claimed to be. That, and she was probably working with these 2 guys outside of my door. There was then another loud knocking at the door from the 2 men. They were still there and not going away. I then called the campus security number and quickly told them what was going on. My dorm building was old, and I didn't trust these thin wooden doors to hold up if these guys wanted to bust in. They continued knocking. I was told that a campus safety officer would be there shortly. I looked around my room quickly for any type of a weapon that I could use. I really had nothing though. The men knocked at the door on and off for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Then I heard another voice farther down the hall. The security officer was here. The 2 men took off running in the other direction. I went to the door and looked out, and when I did, I saw that they were gone. I opened up the door, and I saw the safety officer running after the men, but they had gotten a long head start against him because he was at the complete opposite end of the hallway. The men were unfortunately able to get away. I spoke with some school officials and campus safety officers about what had happened the next day. The Lily girl did not go to my college. Luckily after that, I never heard from her or the other guys again. That was the craziest thing to happen in my time in college.
I am a 26-year-old female. Earlier this year, I met up with one of my best friends, Courtney. It was a Friday night and we went to a local village. Next to the center of town, there were some restaurants, and there was also a park with live music being played. We had made reservations to the restaurant, but got there about an hour early to walk around and enjoy the night. It was very nice weather that evening, and lots of other people were out. Courtney and I walked over to the concert, and there was a bit of a crowd standing nearby. We hung out there for a while until it was time for our dinner reservations. While we were over there, I took a picture of Courtney and I and posted it to my Snapchat story. We later went to a nearby restaurant and then walked around the plaza. After we left, we each went home. Now, after arriving back to my apartment, I saw that I had a few Snapchat notifications. One of them in particular caught my eye. A guy who I did not know responded to my story. He responded to the picture of Courtney and I and said, "I was behind you guys." I did not have any clue as to who this guy was, and I did not even remember becoming friends with him on Snapchat.
I realized that he must have recognized us though, and also been at the concert thing. I responded with something like, "Oh, haha, that's funny." He then said something like, "Yes, I was watching you the whole time." I was a little bit creeped out by this response, but hoped and assumed that he was just joking. I did not respond. However, the man then sent another message a very short time later. I looked, and he asked where I was going next weekend and said that he would watch us then too. I asked the man who he even was. I was wondering why and when I became friends with him on Snapchat. The man did not respond, but left me on read. After that, I blocked him. I then started talking to Courtney and telling her of the situation. Courtney said that the guy had also sent her some Snapchats that same night. She also mentioned how he was being creepy, and she too did not know who he was. After that, she blocked him as well. I remember that for a few days, and the next time I saw Courtney, I was a little bit paranoid. Luckily, nothing strange has happened since, except I never saw what the guy looked like, and I still don't know. I'm not sure if he was actually at the concert thing and watching us, or if he was just saying that on Snapchat. I honestly don't know why. I'm just hoping that I never encounter him again. I feel like some people might relate to this, because we've all heard of someone taking a Snapchat and noticing something they shouldn't have seen. One night, I was sitting at home. It was late, and I was completely alone. I lived in a very rural area, far from any neighbors or buildings, in a small town in Minnesota. I won't name the town, but there was no one around for miles. My house was pretty big because my parents were farmers, but they did really well for themselves. I'd say they were millionaires, so we had one of those rich farmhouses. It was white with columns everywhere, and the living room was the size of 2 kitchens. I'm just trying to paint the picture for you. That night, I was sitting on the couch, watching a movie, Snapchatting my girlfriend and some friends. I was eating, relaxing, and the whole night had been completely quiet. No strange sounds, no mysterious figures outside the window. I wasn't worried at all. I'd never had any incidents, not even with coyotes. I felt safe. Like I said, I'm being overly detailed to set the scene. My Snapchat was open, and I figured it was a good time to send a picture to my girlfriend because I'd just gotten out of the shower and I felt like I looked good. My couch faced away from the floor-to-ceiling windows, which I'd left open. Why? I don't know. There'd never been an incident, so I didn't think much of it. I snapped a picture and sent it to my girlfriend. A few minutes later, I noticed her name pop up in the chat. She said, "Kyle, I think someone's behind you. Do you have someone over?" She sounded frantic. I responded, "No, what are you talking about?" and I turned around. I saw nothing. Just to make sure, I took another picture, this time framing the window more clearly, and sent it. She saved the snap and replied, "Kyle, do you not see it?" So I looked closer, and my heart sank. There was a man, a full-grown man, about 6'5", standing outside my window, staring at me. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Should I text her back? Should I run? Should I pretend nothing happened? I didn't want to panic her, so I played it cool and said, "Let me double check," but inside, I was scared out of my mind. I was alone with no service in most parts of the house. I thought, what should I do? What would John Wick do? Before I could decide, I heard glass shatter from upstairs. The smash echoed through the house, coming from the top floor. We had 4 floors: basement, main floor, upstairs, and attic. I panicked and remembered reading somewhere that if someone breaks into your house, you should turn off all the lights because you know the house better than they do. I ran to the light switch, and luckily our house had a smart system, so with one button I turned off all the lights and locked all the doors. But it didn't matter. He'd already smashed a window to get in. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a golf club. I wasn't about to let some intruder take over my house. I was in fight mode. I moved to the 2nd floor, thinking he wouldn't realize I was no longer on the main floor. I could hear his footsteps above me, slow and deliberate, like a movie. I didn't know if he had a weapon, but I gripped the golf club tighter. As I listened, I heard him coming down the stairs. I hid behind a wall, holding the club like a kid playing hide and seek. The tension was unbearable. When he stepped off the last stair, I swung as hard as I could, hitting him in the knee. He tumbled down the stairs and scrambled to his feet, running. I chased him, yelling, "Get back here," as if that would stop him. In my panic, I tripped and fell down the stairs, dropping the club. By the time I got up, he was gone, hiding somewhere else in the house. Now I was unarmed, searching for an intruder. I felt completely vulnerable. I ran upstairs to my parents' room, looking for a weapon. I found a gun taped under my dad's bed. I couldn't believe it. What kind of a person tapes a gun there? But I was desperate. I grabbed the gun and shouted, "Come out or I'll shoot." He yelled back, "Do it, I dare you." I couldn't pinpoint his location, but it sounded like he was in the far left corner of the basement. Without thinking, I ran down there and started firing. 6 shots echoed through the house, deafening me. My ears were ringing so badly I dropped the gun. The man bolted past me, jumping over my arms as I tried to grab him. Disoriented, I could barely hear or react. He ran to the front door, but it was locked, and he couldn't figure out the system. Panicking, he ran to the 4th floor and smashed another window before jumping out and disappearing into the woods. For the first time, I saw his face clearly. I immediately called my parents and told them everything. My girlfriend had been blowing up my phone asking if I was okay. My parents got home a few days later. I showed them the damage and told them everything. I yelled at my dad for leaving a gun where anyone could find it, but he said it might have saved my life. Long story short, the cops came and found no evidence of the man. With no neighbors nearby, there were no witnesses. I still don't know what his intentions were, but I'm grateful my girlfriend noticed something in that Snapchat. Without her, I don't know what would have happened.
This story happened to my friend Emily and I about 5 years ago. We were walking home from work one day. We worked together and also lived on the same street, so we would walk home together all the time. On this night, it was really nice out, so we stopped at a park. We went to the edge of it and sat on the park bench and had some food that we had taken from work. It was relaxing, and Emily took a photo of us together and posted it on her Snapchat story. We stayed there for about 10 more minutes and were really in no hurry to leave. Emily was looking at her story again to see the people that viewed it, which is something she would always do. Then she said, "That's strange." She said that a guy named Brian, who was not on her friends list, had viewed her story. She said she didn't know who this guy was. I grabbed her phone and looked at it. I saw that she had made her story public so that everybody on their Snap map could see it if they clicked on our location in the park. I turned off that setting for her because I figured it was dangerous to have it on. We got up and left after that to walk the rest of the way home. As we walked down the path through the rest of the park, we noticed a man start to walk behind us. He looked to be about 40 and wore sunglasses and a black sweater. I hadn't seen him at all when we had been in the park, but I figured this had to just be a coincidence. But the man kept following us as we walked. I got a little bit concerned because the area of our walk home was headed into a more secluded area where there wasn't as much people around. We decided to walk faster, but when we did, the man seemed to speed up as well. We had about 10 more minutes to make it home, and we thought we were just being paranoid, but we were seriously scared at this point. Then, out of nowhere, the man started full-on sprinting towards us. The both of us turned and ran off the path into a slightly wooded area, and the man did as well. It went up as a hill, and we ran all the way up the hill until it got to a quiet sidewalk, where we thankfully saw a guy walking his 2 dogs. We approached the man and his dogs, and the man who was chasing us stopped and ended up running in the other direction. We told the man with the dogs we thought we were being chased, and he watched out for us as we walked a couple of blocks away. Then we walked all the way back home. We made it back all right, but we're very careful. It was a very bizarre thing, and it had to be the guy that saw Emily's story. We're convinced of that.
A couple of months ago, I had a scary experience on Snapchat. I remember that out of nowhere, one night, this random creepy guy added me. Well, I didn't know who he was at first, so I added him back out of curiosity. I thought that maybe I knew him, but he sent me a snap a very short time later. When I opened it, I saw this guy who I did not recognize, but he was in a dark room using the flash and holding the camera extremely close to his face. His face looked disturbing, to say the least. I'm not sure if he was trying to be creepy or what, but he sent like 4 pictures all right in a row and said hi to me. After seeing them, I asked him who he was. He started sending more snaps. I didn't even want to open them though. The man sent more creepy pictures of his face really close up when I finally did. He told me that he was going to come over. I quickly turned off my location, which had been on. Then I decided to just delete the guy. I should have never added him back in the first place. But I didn't know, maybe he was somebody that I knew or something. But after I had deleted him, there were still a few snaps that he had sent before he had been deleted. I opened them. One of them said, "I already got your location." That one really creeped me out. I just hoped that he was only trying to threaten me or something. Maybe he didn't actually have my location. And even if he did, maybe he wouldn't come over. This was already nighttime, but it wasn't that late. So for the rest of the night, I was at home and nothing happened. By the end of the night, I had forgotten about the whole ordeal. But I would soon be reminded, because when I was starting to get ready for bed, there was a knock at my front door. I had a bad feeling about it immediately. I mean, who knocks on somebody's door at almost midnight? Still, I had to see who was there, so I walked into the living room and looked out of the window. And that's when I saw this man standing there. It was the same guy who had been Snapchatting me. I was so creeped out. I ran back for my bedroom and hoped that the guy would go away. When I had reached inside my room, though, I heard some loud noises. The guy was not knocking on the door, but seemingly trying to open it. I got my phone out and called 911. I told the operator that somebody was trying to enter my house. I gave my address and name and hoped that somebody would be there soon. But after this, I didn't hear any more noises from the front door for a while. Still, I wasn't going to leave my bedroom. Moments later, I heard a noise from the back door to the house. The guy was trying to get in there. Then there was more loud noises. It sounded like he was maybe trying to break the window. These are just educated guesses, because I couldn't see from where I was, but that's what it sounded like. I stayed where I was in my bedroom, and luckily, the police got there much faster than expected. Before I knew it, I saw flashing lights from my bedroom window in the driveway. The man was still in my backyard. He tried running away, but the police were able to catch him. It was probably the best scenario that I could have hoped for. I still don't know how the guy knew me. I didn't recognize him at all. This happened when I was a senior in high school. Snapchat was how I communicated with all of my friends during that time. In fact, I would bet that Snapchat was the most popular app in the entire school. I went to a pretty large high school and really enjoyed it. Sometime in the fall semester, though, I was added on Snapchat by a new user. It happened on a day shortly after I arrived at school. It did not seem like a bot or anything like that, but I still didn't know who this person was. The username was Josh something. It was a lot of numbers, and the name was just Josh. There were probably a few people named Josh at my school. I added the account back without giving it much thought. Not long after doing so, Josh sent me a Snapchat. It was a chat though, not a picture. He said hi to me and what's up. I responded asking him who he was and how I knew him. He claimed to go to my school and mentioned it by name. I believed him and had no reason not to. I don't remember exactly what I said after that, probably just cool or something. We talked very briefly, but I didn't know what he looked like, so I didn't know if I had a class with him or anything. The conversation didn't last very long, and I stopped talking with him. But later on, in that same school day, I got another Snapchat from Josh. Once again, it was just a chat, and I still didn't know what he looked like. He said, "Meet me behind the school near the English hallway doors after school." That was kind of weird. Why was he asking me to meet him after school? I knew where that exit was from the English hallway. It was rarely used and in the back corner of the school in a quieter area. I asked him why. He said to just please show up. I really wanted to know who exactly this guy was, but when I clicked on his username again, there was no way of knowing. He didn't have a last name or initial, just Josh and a bunch of numbers. So when the school day ended, I did not go behind the school like he asked. I just left through the main side exit and went to my car in the student parking lot. I got another snap from him, and I saw it when I got into my car. He asked me where I was, and I left him on open and then started to drive home. The drive home was normal. When I got to my street where I lived with my parents, though, a car followed me onto it. We lived on a quieter street, and I did not recognize the car. I pulled into my driveway, and the car kept going down the street. I went inside and unpacked my school things, then went into my bedroom. I could see out the window that the same car was now parked on the side of the street a little ways up. The way that it parked, kind of in front of our yard, seemed a little bit strange to me. I couldn't tell who was inside of it though. It was a red 2-door sedan, kind of smaller and looked to be fairly old, at least 15 years old. I covered my window and then went to the kitchen to get something to eat. Not long after, I remembered that the car was gone. Pretty soon, I forgot all about it. I didn't get any Snapchats from Josh and had a pretty normal day. That night though, when I got into my bedroom to go to bed, I saw the car again. It was parked in the same spot, the same red car. I couldn't tell if anybody was inside of it or not. I had a really bad feeling though. I left my bedroom and found my dad and told him about it. This just seemed really strange and I didn't know who it was. I wasn't sure what my dad wanted to do about it, but I figured that I should let him know. He left the house, I guess to go get a closer look at the car. I watched him from the window. Now, I had no idea if anybody was inside of the car or not. It was too hard to tell from where I was. When my dad got about halfway to the car, suddenly it started driving. It sped off and went down the street past my dad standing in our front yard. When the car was gone, my dad came back inside. He said that he saw some man driving. We were glad that the car was now gone. I didn't connect the car to the person on Snapchat, but the next morning I remembered the person. When I looked on Snapchat, I had been blocked from the account. I asked around some friends at school, and none of them knew who the Josh guy could possibly be. I'm pretty sure that a grown man was pretending to be the Josh guy and tried to get me to go with him. He probably followed me home after I didn't meet up with him like he asked. It's really creepy to think about if that was in fact the case. The good thing though is that I've never heard from him again or saw the car after that. This is something that happened back when I was in high school. So one night I was at home and in my bedroom. It was pretty late and my parents and siblings had gone to bed already. My room was at one end of the front corner of the house and on the first floor. I often stayed up pretty late back then for some reason. But I remember that out of nowhere, I got this call on Snapchat. I didn't recognize who it was from. I don't even remember the username. It was something really hard to memorize. When I looked and didn't know who it was, I was very curious, so I actually decided to answer it. It was not a video call, but just a regular call. When I picked it up, at first I heard nothing. I asked who was there. Then I heard this whisper coming from the other end. I really couldn't make out what was being said though. I was trying to understand and turning the volume up on my phone. Then I made out a few words, but not much. I asked again who was calling, but the person hung up. Now, I guess I had some type of setting on my Snapchat where just anybody could call me or send me pictures, because shortly after this person hung up on me, I received a snap from them. I was very curious, so I opened it up. What I saw was somebody wearing a full clown mask taking a selfie. It was very strange to say the least. I sent them a message, again asking who this was, but unfortunately I did not get a response to this. Well, I thought that was that. I was a little freaked out by the whole thing, but the rest of the night nothing happened, and the next day things were fine. But that next night, I found myself alone in my bedroom late at night again. This time I remember that I was sitting at my desk. In front of it is a window that sort of looks out to the front yard. You can also see part of the street. I remember noticing somebody walking down the street. It was very dark, so I couldn't see that well, and at this late night hour, it seemed odd that somebody would be out walking. But then the person came closer, and I realized that it was some guy wearing a clown mask, the same type of one that the guy was wearing who had snapped me the night before. I thought this was very weird when I saw it, but this guy did not walk into our yard or anything. He just continued to walk down my street. I moved out of my bedroom and went into the living room to keep watching him. He continued to walk down the street until he was soon out of sight. Then, after that, I never saw him again. I blocked that account that had snapped me, and since then, nothing more happened. I'm still curious about it though. Was that clown the same person? It had to be. How did he know me though? That's what I'd like to find out. I downloaded Snapchat again a while ago. I usually take breaks from it because social media can affect my mental health, but I thought everyone else has it, so maybe it's a good way to stay in contact with my friends. I started snapping people back and noticed that since I last used it, they added a new feature where you could quick add people. I thought it was pretty cool, and maybe I'd make some new friends. Not long after, I started getting added by a few people. I didn't think much of it and gave it a blind eye, but I chatted here and there. Then, out of nowhere, about 2 days later, I was added to a group chat. At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed like a normal group chat of about 10 to 15 people talking about random stuff. Mostly it was guys, and they talked about typical things that guys talk about, like cars and sports, although there were a few women in the group. I barely participated and rarely said anything. A few more days passed, and still nothing weird had happened, which is funny because usually by now I'd be getting unsolicited messages. Then someone added me. His name was Josh, and he was from the group chat. He started messaging me personally, but never mentioned anything about the group or anybody in it. It seemed like he was trying to get to know me. We talked a lot, sometimes all night, and even FaceTimed a few times. He'd ask me things like what I liked to do and what my favorite food was. It was nice, and I was happy to make a normal friend. But then he started asking weird personal questions. It felt like he was fishing for something, but I couldn't figure out what. One night, he asked me something strange. I can't even remember exactly what, but it was enough to make me uneasy and wonder if something was off about him. Then it happened. Everyone got kicked out of the group chat except for me and 6 other guys. It was unsettling, but I tried not to think about it too much and I brushed it off. This time, the group was a lot more talkative, not just to each other, but specifically to me. They acted like we'd been best friends for years. I played along but remained skeptical about Josh. Soon enough, we all got close, and they started suggesting hanging out as a group. They wanted to play pickleball around 8 p.m. I was confused, why so late? But they explained it was because everybody worked late, so I agreed. I mentioned it to some of my friends, and they said that it sounded sketchy, but nothing bad had ever happened to me before, so I didn't think much of it. That night, I grabbed my pickleball gear and headed to the meeting spot. When I arrived, the parking lot was empty. I assumed they weren't there yet, so I waited. Eventually, I saw cars pulling in, 6 of them. At first, I was relieved, thinking I was overreacting, but then I noticed something strange. The cars all parked on the opposite side of the lot, far from mine. Josh and the others got out, along with a woman who I didn't recognize. She had her pickleball gear with her and walked over to them. They all gathered around her as if talking, but then suddenly they grabbed her. In the blink of an eye, they shoved her into one of the cars. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't normal. I fumbled for my phone, panicking, and checked the group chat. Josh had just sent me a message. "Where are you? We've been waiting for you. It's about to open." They wanted me to show up. I froze and realized that could have been me. My mind raced as Josh sent another message. "Why aren't you responding? Is something wrong?" I looked up, and the group was still in their cars. The woman's car was off, and someone else then got into it and drove it away, probably to hide the evidence. That's when I realized what had just happened. That girl had been kidnapped. It hit me hard. With Snapchat's new update, random group invites had become a tool for traffickers. I didn't know what to do, so I did the only thing that felt safe. I stayed in my car and I drove away. As I did so, I called the police and reported everything, giving descriptions of the car and the guys the best I could. I don't know if they saw me leave, but I immediately blocked Josh and left the group chat. To this day, I still get random friend requests on Snapchat, but I'll never add someone I don't know again. This happened last year and still creeps me out when I think of it. So I was at home one night by myself. I was just in my bedroom scrolling through my phone. All of a sudden, I saw this Snapchat notification from a name that I did not recognize. I was curious, so I went to Snapchat and opened the snap to see. It was a selfie of what appeared to be a man. However, this photo was taken extremely close to his face, and he also appeared to be in a very dark room. I could barely see his face at all, and didn't recognize it to be anybody that I knew. The picture honestly looked very creepy. There was no words with the picture, and that was it. I guess at some point, I must have become friends with this guy. I didn't know when though. I had Snapchat for probably 10 years. I did not send a picture back, but instead typed a message for the guy, asking who he was. Then he sent another photo. When I opened it, I saw that it was much like the one before. It was honestly so creepy. I wish I would have screenshotted it, but I didn't. I thought that maybe the person sent a picture like this by mistake, but after the second one, I realized that it was not. I asked again who it was. The person's response, though, really shocked me. He simply said, "I'm coming over now." I thought that he had to be joking, but I also realized then that I had my location on Snapchat. I quickly went into the settings and turned my location off. If this guy was serious, I was hoping that he would not know where I was. Then I blocked the mysterious guy. I thought that was it. I returned to what I was doing, but I couldn't help but feel a little bit creeped out by the whole thing. Well, roughly 30 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I had a terrible feeling instantly. I think by now it was like 10-something at night. Not a normal time for somebody to come to the door. I carefully left my bedroom and went down the hallway. Eventually, I got to a window that I could look out and see who was there. When I did, I saw a man wearing a ski mask standing there. I couldn't believe it. The guy must have got my location before I had turned it off. I watched him knock on the door again. Then he started to look around. When he did, I quickly moved back and away from the window. I heard the guy walk off the step, but did not know where he was going to. The next thing I knew, I heard him right outside one of the main windows. I ran back into my bedroom and then called the police. I locked my bedroom door and covered my window. Then I just waited. I did not hear anything during this time. I wasn't sure what was going on, if he was trying to break in or maybe if he left. About 10 minutes later is when the cops arrived. They came to the front door and I told them about what happened. They offered to look around, and I almost said that they didn't have to, but I ended up saying sure. Then they looked around my backyard, and surprisingly found the man hiding in some bushes. When they located him, they asked him to come out. He ignored them and then tried to run. However, the police caught up with him before he left the yard. It was the same guy who had been Snapchatting me. I'm not sure what his plans were. I'm just glad that he was caught. So, me and my friends used to have this group chat that was mostly for sending stupid memes. Occasionally, we'd talk about hanging out, but it was always the same thing. People would say, "Yeah, for sure," and then never actually hang out. The group was me, Emily, David, and Ryan. Ryan was your typical guy, always getting into weird situations and trouble. He was constantly meeting sketchy people on eBay or Craigslist, trying to make a quick buck off random stuff he had lying around. One day, Ryan was selling his four-wheeler and asked us to come with him because he didn't trust the buyer. We told him, if you don't trust him, why sell it to him in the first place? But Ryan didn't get what we were trying to say. He barely even acknowledged that it was a red flag. We were all confused as to why he wasn't seeing what seemed obvious to us. We told him to just leave it and wait until he could find a more trustworthy buyer, but he didn't listen. He told us the deal was on the south side of the city, which was the sketchiest area imaginable. That side of town was notorious for crime and kidnappings. That was the biggest red flag of all. None of us wanted to go, but Ryan wouldn't listen. Throughout the day, he was snapping us updates about getting his stuff ready and making progress on the sale. I messaged one of the other friends in the group chat privately and told them, I don't think we should let him go over there. They replied, why not? He's a grown man. If he gets into trouble, that's on him. We warned him. I thought that was a pretty stupid reason to abandon a friend who might get himself into serious trouble. No one else was listening to me though, and they insisted I was overreacting. They said if Ryan needed to learn a lesson, then so be it. Hours went by and Ryan was at the person's house. We kept checking up on him because, like I said, the whole thing felt wrong. He kept snapping us back, reassuring us that everything was fine and that we were overreacting. But still, we couldn't relax until we knew he was safe. Then he sent a snap of himself in a basement. We all thought, why are you in their basement? Someone even commented, what are you doing down there? But he didn't respond, which was really odd. I figured maybe he was busy talking to the buyer and just wanted to update us. But then he snapped another picture from a different room in the basement. It was getting weirder and weirder each snap. Still, we ignored it because we figured if he was snapping us, he must be okay. The next snap was in a dark room showing someone's feet, but they weren't Ryan's feet. That's when we realized someone else had taken Ryan's phone and had been snapping us the whole time, pretending everything was fine. We started panicking. We tried to check his location, but the person who had his phone turned it off. We knew something was seriously wrong and that we needed to act fast, but we didn't know what to do. We tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. We thought about contacting his family, but none of us knew them. We were stuck. Someone suggested driving to the area to try to find his car, but we knew that could take hours and maybe even days, and it wasn't a guaranteed plan because we didn't even know the location. The next snap came in and I nearly lost it. It was a photo of fresh blood on the floor, wet, bright red, and horrifying. We all froze. That's when we realized we weren't just overreacting. Something terrible had happened. We immediately FaceTimed each other and tried calling the police from someone else's phone. But without any concrete evidence or location, we couldn't do much. We were completely out of luck. We all went to bed that night, frantic and unable to sleep. Days and weeks passed, and we didn't hear a thing from Ryan. Then, about 6 months later, we saw his face on the news. He'd been reported missing. I thought to myself, if we had just gone with him or stopped him, maybe we could have done something. After months of searching, the police gave up. Then, out of nowhere, someone found Ryan walking down the highway in nothing but his underwear and shoes. He looked starved, barely alive. When we finally got the full story in the group chat, we couldn't believe what had happened. To be honest, I can't even talk about it. It's too gruesome and traumatizing. I'm just glad that Ryan is alive.